Hello. On behalf of the European Association of STEM Educators, I welcome you all to the second day of our summit. After a day full of extraordinary sharing by our speakers, today we count on continuing to learn more about STEM education. With a concern to better understand the meaning of STEM, how we can create dynamic, challenging, and significant learning enhancing activities, we have with us today educators and researchers who will share with us their ideas and projects. We will better understand the meaning of the letter M in the context of STEAM, as well as what it will be the best way to apply STEM activities in school environments. We will have the opportunity to reflect on the role of makerspaces, problem-solving methodologies, and gender dynamics whenever we talk about STEM. No matter how a school chooses to implement STEM education programs, it's important to keep in mind that STEM approach intentionally connects standards, assessments, and lessons that integrate science, technology, engineering, math, and the arts. And more activities are proposed to students who follow a STEM orientation. As educators, we have a duty to incorporate in them as many dimensions as possible in order to enhance their usefulness in solving day-to-day problems. I believe that all of us agree with Leonardo da Vinci about the importance of developing a complete mind. Study the science of art, study the art of science, learn how to see, realize that everything connects with everything else. So, today we start with Karolina Velekovic. She's going to tell us what M in STEAM stands for. Is it math or something else? Next, Joe and Richard will give us a close idea of what is the TAM approaches in schools and how it gives educators a practical approach to designing more embodied and inquiry-based curricula and pedagogies. So let's start with Carolina. Carolina, the floor is yours.
Dear colleagues, I'm very glad that I have been granted this opportunity to present my thoughts and my ideas. My name is Karolina Brlekovic. I have been a teacher in a secondary technical school for almost 29 years now. Working in a school which teaches computer technicians and electrical technicians had shaped my work as a mathematics teacher. In the beginning, it was obvious that with the type of the pupils I work with, I have to use ICT in my lectures and stay in touch with the times. I was also given the opportunity to teach, but also learn from my pupils. Mathematics as a subject in this type and any other type of school is crucial. Yet, it is not liked by many. Therefore, me, and also you, must encourage pupils to see mathematics from a different perspective and come to the conclusion that mathematics can be loved and learned. I became a part of Scientific Ambassadors community because of the aforementioned reasons, so that I could share and expand my knowledge. After all these years of researching and promoting STEM, I must ask myself, but also you, what the letter M in STEM is standing for. Sometimes it seems to me that we are purposefully hiding it. STEM is a shorter for science, technology, engineering and mathematics, and we all know that. But STEM is very complex, and as a result it is difficult to list all the fields it encompasses. Both in Europe and Croatia, much is done about popularization of STEM, from kindergarten to long life education. There are a lot of workshops on virtual history, modern technology, DNA, 3D pens, etc. But through the research, I have noticed all but no mathematics. Few years ago, the Croatian school system underwent a transformation in the model of school of life. New curricula of general education subjects, mathematics included. So teachers were educated, digital education content was made, schools were equipped. The development of STEM was pushed by EU projects and equipping of schools. Equipment is important for development of STEM in schools, but is it enough to change the way pupils think? In my opinion, STEM is not equipment, rather a mindset. Students can be encouraged to become a part of STEM without expensive gear. So, STEM is not equipment. STEM, in my opinion, is an approach. We must encourage pupils to research, to analyze in detail, to think logical, discuss with reason, learn through the trial and error method, learn independently, combine the knowledge which the child has mastered at a certain age. Learning through the trial and error is especially important for pupils. We must teach students that failure is not something bad. Analyzing mistakes in our works help us come to an answer and, of course, to the knowledge. A task done through a STEM approach does not have to be difficult, time-consuming, nor financially demanding. So, give your students graphite pen and ask them questions like, what material is the pen made of? Or where do we can find this material in nature? Or give them a task to assemble a model of a useful object with 10 pencils. Ask them, why is the price of graphite pen €1? So many tasks and so many questions and just one ordinary pen. So let us focus back on mathematics in STEM. I believe we all can agree that mathematics is the foundation of STEM, and I will bravely declare that STEM cannot exist without mathematics. So, to prepare mathematics lecture with the STEM approach, we must use lots of imagination and different knowledge. Must we really come up with this approach? As a Scientix ambassador, I will of course mention the Scientix website and the resources that can be found on it. And of course, you can use it in your classroom. So while researching the Scientix website, I have found some interesting topics and ready-made scenarios for mathematics lecture where students can use the true STEM approach. So here are some suggestions. For example, impact of traffic noise on a people, build your own disruption function or design a garden for your community, or the mathematics of healthy life, or more light, less lighting. Of course, you don't have to carry out these scenarios in full, but they can give you inspiration for your future lectures maybe. Lastly, I will show you some projects that I have come up with during online school. The projects include closed-end questions and open-ended tasks. In this way, the pupils' work have been diverse. In this project named Aquarium, there is a tower, and the tower is 5 meters tall, and it can be used as a scenic view. The aquarium consists of 2 cylinders, like in a picture, one internal and one external, with staircase between the two. I give pupils few more details. For example, the surface area for the foundation of the tower is 20 meters squared. The scenic view, the yellow part on this picture, must hold 7 people at once with access to the outer fence. The aquarium should be visible from the inside, so the people walking up the stairs should be able to see internal part of the aquarium and the fishes. And what is the task for pupils? So they must determine the surface area of the glass needed for the aquarium. So they will research the thickness of the glass and how much it costs, because not all kind of glass can be used for aquarium. Then the amount of the water in liters needed to fill the aquarium to the top. Think about the pressure of the water onto the glass. So here is also a little bit of physics. At the end, we have combination of biology and mathematics. They will learn about the number of fish which fit in the aquarium. So they will research how many fish an aquarium can hold per liter of water. This is a very complex project, and if you will work on this project, you must give your pupils enough time for researching and give them opportunity to ask you if then they don't know something how to do it. This is the second project named Pool, and the pupils are in charge of maintaining a square-shaped pool. The owner has told them some measures, and the pupils measured the length and the depth of the pool, which equate to 5 and 3 meters. So what is the task for students? They must find the best offer for coloring the pool, so they will investigate and find free offers online, or they can go to store and choose the best one. What they must keep in mind is how large is the package of the color and how many meters squared it can color. Second question is to find the tarp for the pool which they can use, or somebody can use to cover it while it's not being used. And also they have instructions to find free offers and choose the best one and the quality one. Third question is ecological questions, to find the best way to maintain the quality of the water. So they have 2 options, or they can find third options. I give them options of chemicals for maintaining the water quality, or filtering system. So they must inform themselves about the cost of the both options and which one is the cheaper for 1 year. And must have answer to a question: after how many days will the filtering system be cheaper than the chemical one? This project was expanded with help of my colleagues, scientists ambassador Snježana Damjanović and Sonja Šumonja, and this project you can find on exchange program. Now we have a third project also dealing with ecological problems. It's named Let's Reduce Plastic. So a manufacturer of ecological juices packs these juices in cardboard packaging as shown in the image. And the dimensions of these juices bases are 7 and 5 centimeters, while the height is 10 centimeters. So he packed 4 juices together in a thin transparent plastics. Up now, they package the juices in the following way shown on the picture. But he's thinking how to change the way of packaging, so he use less plastic. So what is the task for students? So to recommend at least one new way of packaging the juices, and to analyze does this way contribute to less plastic usage. Second is to research the prices of cardboard and plastic foil, and in the foil on the base is replaced with the cardboard. Can they spare some money and investigate this replacement? And the first, how many liters of juice are in the small packaging? Will we save on manufacturing costs if we enlarge the size of packaging? And more important questions, will we save money on plastic? So the last project I will present is the greenhouse, and the task is about greenhouse in a botanical garden. So the botanical garden need a new greenhouse, and they have this competition, and they must prepare, the pupils must prepare the plan for this project. So there are some requirements for this greenhouse. The greenhouse must be built on a surface of 20 meters squared. The greenhouse must fit a 10-meter tall tree which is in the middle of the plot where the greenhouse must be. So it's 10 meters tall now. And the greenhouse must be in the shape of the cube with the pyramid at the top. So here we have geometrical shapes. The entrance is made of 2 doors, with each doors having the following dimensions: 150 within and 3 meter height. And so what is the task for a pupil? Pupil must make a sketch of a greenhouse and propose its dimensions. The dimensions are not given. They must determine the surface area of the glass which is required to build the greenhouse. Must also find the 3 offers online to determine the prices of the needed glass. Determine the quality length of needed metal supports, because the greenhouse is not just a glass, it's made also of metal supports. And find 3 offers online or go to store to determine the price of metal pipes necessary to build the greenhouse. All 4 projects I represent now, at the end, pupils must give all answer to all 3 questions, tables with offers, the full measurement, the full calculation and recommendation for the owner. And all these tasks must be in one of the digital tool they can choose. I didn't give them, I give them examples, but they can choose whatever digital tool they can or they want to use. How did my pupils handle this test? very hard tasks. Have a look at some of the works that are truly detailed and contain a lot of research. Here is the first work about aquarium. You can see a mathematical part of the work. This is the second one about also aquarium. You can see the stairs and the sketch about it, investigation about glass, investigation about fishes in a tank. This is some work about a pool. And the last one is about greenhouse. So you can see how this pupil calculate about dimensions and about the price for glass and for metal support. And I think this work is fabulous. At the end, I would like to thank you all for your attention and again for this opportunity to speak to you. And this is my email, so if you have any other questions or you want some materials for these projects, write to me and I will send you the answer or some materials for these projects. Thank you very much.
Hi, I'm Jo Trousdale. I'm an arts educator and a sociologist of education.
Hi, I'm Richard Davis. I'm a former science educator and these days I'm a philosopher of education.
Thank you for taking the time to watch this video. We are both academic researchers, but we're also teacher educators. So we would be interested in anyone who would like to have a discussion either about the theoretical ideas in this work or about its development in practice.
Having undertaken previous research into STEAM education, we are arguing here that a more coherent account of STEAM is needed in order to improve the recognition of STEAM as having educative value and in order to develop STEAM approaches. In our previous work, we were part of the Bureau Commission into STEAM education. We suggested that the term STEAM reflects a range of very different types of practices for different purposes, and that these often reflect a discontent with education policy and practice, most often with STEM. In this presentation, we suggest that it may be helpful to us as a STEAM community to recognise the core characteristics of STEAM, a point we will be revisiting in our panel discussion. Our TAME approach has been developed as a pragmatic approach to working with schools in England who typically teach science and maths, sometimes technology, but rarely engineering. In our experience, school teachers' concerns is more with the need to broaden curricula and address science and technology better than with the notion of STEAM education. We believe the approach outlines principles for how professionals and educators can collaborate as STEAM educators.
Our starting point has been with the real-world activities of scientists, engineers and artists in designing a flexible model for STEAM education. This has been developed over a 5-year research project called the Imaginarium, working with over 600 pupils from 15 elementary schools in an English city. It has been further developed in a 2-year project called Teach Make, working with 14 teachers from 7 elementary schools in the same region. The results from the 5-year study showed that pupils gained confidence in learning science and design technology, and that teachers recognised this and saw improvements in pupil learning. The 2-year study has shown that teachers can use the model to develop educationally effective schemes of work, supporting specific learning outcomes. The model is shown to be practical, if challenging, in mainstream schools. The Imaginarium was an educational intervention developed by an arts organisation working in partnership with engineers and educators. The engineers and artists sought to coach the habit of invention in children by combining the creative and systematic practices of engineers, guided by educational research. Schools welcomed the opportunity for creative and real-world engagement which might excite learners and for improving science and design technology learning in schools. The intervention was grounded in the ways that engineers and arts organisations had worked together in developing a number of large-scale arts productions. Children were invited to be part of a 10-week intervention, which was delivered partly in school and partly in a professional creation centre. They were given a real-world commission to work with adult engineers and artists, collectively known as Imagineers. The children were imaginatively framed as young Imagineers and were brought into the practice of the adult Imagineers. They learnt and developed their commission through a series of physical theatre, drawing and making activities. Here you see some examples of the kind of work they undertook and how they worked: in groups, in pairs, sometimes one-to-one with adult experts, and recording their ideas by drawing in journals. Research data was collected from participant observations, researcher field notes, and interviews with children, teachers, and Imagineers, which happened pre- and post-project, from photographs and pupil journals. They were also collected from pre- and post-project questionnaires with pupils and with teachers. The evidence from all years of the project was positive. Children's confidence in their competence and creativity as learners, and specifically in science and design technology, improved. They gained a clearer understanding of working in design and technology, and of this as a natural site for working artistically and scientifically. Teacher questionnaires and interviews recognised that the project had developed children's understanding, their creativity, and their confidence. Many children spoke after the project of thinking differently about design technology, science, the arts, and themselves, and also significantly of feeling more capable as learners. Here the children's comments indicate how motivated they were by the physical challenge of learning through the experience of making, and of how rewarding it was. The Imaginarium whet the appetite of schools, not just to learn how to support and rerun a version of this project, but to expand this way of working for other teachers and other schools. And a second project, Teach Make, was developed.
In the Teach Make project, teachers were supported to develop a scheme of work in each of their schools. The scheme of work was related to the school's development plans and focused on an area that they thought needed improvement. Teachers in each school, working in groups of 2, worked with engineers and artists, and they also met together as 7 schools over the 2 years with the engineers, artists, and educational researchers. During those sessions, they learned more about art making practices that are useful for education, physical theatre, drawing, making practices, along with digital technologies and tools. The focus was on raising their skills, but also in enabling them to feel more confident about leading these kinds of activities with their pupils. The teachers talked about the TAME model being really helpful in terms of developing both these innovative new curricula, but also reflecting on the ways they could develop their pedagogy more generally. During the project, we collected data in a variety of ways. Both Joe and I were participant observers at the sessions with all 7 schools together, and we also collected notes on meetings between individual school teachers. We interviewed the teachers pre, mid and post project, and we also interviewed artists and engineers pre and post project. It's worth noting that the project itself took place during COVID, and that presented some challenges for working collaboratively across the 7 schools. Teachers were unanimously positive about the project and recognised that the model allowed them to develop their teaching in valuable ways. One senior leader has commented that the scheme of work in their school was seen by pupils as the highlight of the year. In the red circle here, we see a comment from one of the teachers. TeachMake is helping me to be more confident to hand over control to the children in the classroom, allowing them to lead their own learning, inspired by their natural curiosity. I am thinking about more kinesthetic ways of learning and trying to integrate further movement-based, experimental ways to learn into our curriculum.
The diagram on the right-hand side represents the present articulation of the TAME model, centred on the real-world activity of art making. It comprises 2 main structuring principles and several key characteristics. The 2 key principles, the community of practice, is outlined in the outer part of the circle, and the commission, which pulls it together, at the core. The first structuring principle, the community of practice, is one developed by Wenger in 1991 as bringing together a particular domain, here art making, with the practices of a community. Wenger identified the inherently educative nature of apprentice-like learning that's apparent in many Indigenous professions. They noted that whilst there are moments of demonstration of skills or directive teaching of necessary theory or knowledge, and that was acquired through a master-pupil model, learning essentially happened through working on a task together with peers, exploring tools, practices and materials, learning from and alongside each other in order to get a feel of and make sense of all the aspects. Belonging to such a community of practice reflected interest in the particular domain, here art making, and a readiness to exchange expertise, to show and talk through different ways of working, tools used, and to share stories of people's experiences. As such, a member might at one moment be an expert, central in sharing a skill, and yet at another, a silent observer, watching at a distance, but always learning. Wenger's description of community of practice reflected what was observed in the Imaginarium, where the collaborative and person-centred culture of art makers who founded the Imaginarium community of practice affirmed the significance of relationality and the inspiration of professional makers in motivating learners. Our trialling of the model through TeachMake has emphasised the importance of selecting the real-world community of practice carefully to match the desired behaviours of learners, and about thinking imaginatively how to induct learners into that community of practice. The behaviours, shared values and practices that are necessary in that real-world community of practice constitute a model that learners absorb so they absorb values and they echo and practice the behaviours of that community of practice as they work on the commission. You see here in the comments from teachers how they recognise this. There's mention here of children rising to the expectation of a role, about children having to think about what kind of learning behaviours might suit the work they're doing, about a sense of responsibility and collective identity. In the comment on the right, the teacher talks about the concept of community of practice being one where everyone works together to solve a problem. Each person has a valid contribution, the staff and children working side by side, each idea being given worth and time to discuss or pull apart. The Commission generates the focus for the work of the community of practice, and thereby for all learning. It covers the required subject curriculum knowledge identified by the teachers. The Commission, which is revealed at the beginning of the work, is also further layered as the Commission progresses to focus on particular knowledges, skills or behaviours as required. In this respect, it is responsive. As the teacher comment here in orange suggests, the Commission leaves it very much up to the children to let them decide where they're going with it. In the next slide, we give an example.
Let's look then at one school's scheme of work. The curriculum requirement is to build a self-standing three-dimensional object that's set out in national guidance. In the previous scheme of work, all children built a bird box from pre-cut materials following a specified plan given to them by the teacher. And in fact, at the end of that scheme of work, the teacher pulled apart those bird boxes in order to be able to use the same materials the following year. In the new scheme of work, children are inducted into a community of practice of environmental activists. For example, we looked at the possibility as young David Attenboroughs. They were encouraged to empathise with environmental activists and to be able to think and imagine themselves as within such a community. They were encouraged to think about ecosystems and to be able to develop the skills needed for design technology to build a three-dimensional structure that would enhance the ecosystem within the school environment. This was the commission they were given, which was as open-ended as it could be, but at the same time enabled the teacher to know that pupils would be achieving the learning objectives required by our national curriculum.
In addition to the two structuring principles of the TAME approach, there are 4 key characteristics. The first is that learning is active and embodied. This might be in the form of physical theatre, where there's whole-bodied movement, through hands-on exploration of materials, tools and processes, through making and building that enables learners to see and feel how ideas might be represented and understood. A second key characteristic is the significance and need for different spaces. It recognises that the physical space communicates psychological messages about what is possible and desirable. Open and messy art-making spaces signal a very different message to learners than neat rows or groups of tables and chairs. A third key characteristic is the significance of the educator as, or in relation to, professionals or other makers. If the teacher makes alongside the children, either learning with them or modelling practice for them, children will see this as a natural learning practice. And the fourth and vital characteristic is that learning is situated within the commission. The layering of different subject knowledges, science, design, history, technology, maths, art, languages, drama, is required to create the commission, and these knowledges are required to interact. So, for example, a material may need to be waterproof, strong but with some flexibility, to be sustainable, aesthetically pleasing, and to complement the existing colour palette, or to signify an idea. It will thus require scientific, ecological, artistic, and possibly historical or cultural knowledge to be drawn upon and to interact in order to complete the commission.
At the end of developing their schemes of work, teachers reflected on some of the elements of that process. They talked about how children had enjoyed that and how much the teachers had been inspired and enthused by that enjoyment, and that how pupils still remember what they did and can talk about it, not just the excitement of it, but what they learned. They talked about the changes that it had on their planning, that they'd focused on the parts they wouldn't normally think about, like learning behaviours and what the learning environment was to be like. They looked at processes and skills that were to be built along the way. And they talked about how it was about pupil-led and being led in a different kind of way, and the confidence it had given them to think differently about their pedagogy. Thanks very much for listening. These are the references that reflect the kind of work we've been doing recently around the TAME and around STEAM. If you'd like to know anything more about this, get in touch. We're interested in talking about the research, but also the ways in which the TAME is helpful for teachers in a very kind of practical way. Thank you.
Here I am again. Joe and Richard pointed out some really strategic issues. First of all, the need for the recognition of STEAM teaching and its role in present-day schools. With their in-depth work, they address many aspects. I want to highlight the strengths of having, I would call them, two driving forces, commission and community of practice in their TAME approach. Two opposite points, inside and outside, but with the role of embracing the participant with meaningfulness. Also, I personally concur on the fundamental role of boosting confidence, both for teaching in their teaching practice and pupil in their learning. Carolina has identified a relevant issue. Let me call it the minority of M in STEM. Most of us educators, caught in the midst of everything that is new and fancy and trendy, we have been exploring newly engineering hardware and software technologies, addressing new topic or old topic in new ways in the sciences, introducing more and more space, time, theme resources for creativity and art, but we have sometimes lagged behind in integrating and reboosting mathematics per se. Or not? Well, maybe it's an open question. Now for the next two presenters. Giuseppina is presenting out of school learning activities on biodiversity with an holistic, sociable and creative learning approach. And Sinding is answering the question of what is creativity and why it is important in our STEAM lesson. It aims to provide us with a set of creative thinking skills we can apply into any lesson. So let's go and dive into it.
Hello, this is Giuseppina Deo from the first European Summit for STEAM educators. And I'm here just to give you an explanation on my proposed activity. I'm going to talk about STEAM lesson plan on biodiversity. It's an out-of-school learning activity, and it's about a very important topic, you see. And I think the biological diversity of our planet is key to human survival, so it's a very important topic. There are about 9 million species of plants and animals on Earth. We know, but biodiversity is more than just a count of how many different types of plants and animals exist in an area or in the planet. I mean, biodiversity includes genetic diversity, species diversity, and ecosystem diversity, and it could be, maybe it is, a measure of a planetary health. If you observe markers of biodiversity with the individual ecosystem, you are able to see biodiversity as a marker of interconnectedness for the planet as a whole. So, learn about habitats, ecosystem, biomes, and conditions that can threaten biodiversity means also learn of climate change and human interference. So I think it's a good topic for students, especially for students from 16 to 70. Of course, you can adapt this lesson plan to other type of student. You know how make this useful for your students. This activity, it's as I said, it's a out of school learning, and it's proven that out of school learning opportunities in the real world overcome learning disabilities, develops talent, strengthen communities, increasing interest in education and school itself. So for students, it's good to mix learning in out of school activity, and link STEAM subject and their use with everyday life, and is also a cohesive educational opportunity for students because they might largely affect their study path choice and eventually their career. And it also contributes to the creation of innovative and cross-disciplinary approach to STEAM teaching in education. You know, each subject adding their own insight, expertise, and knowledge. So it's a really a good thing. Obviously, in a STEAM lesson plan, we base it on methodologies such as problem, project, or challenge-based learning, because these allow incorporating problem solving, inquiring, and design-based learning into the teaching activity, taking care, of course, of real challenges in authentic context that of our world. So, finally, that facilitates deep learning to enhance 21st century skills, such as critical thinking, collaboration, communication, creativity, and divergent thinking also. So, we can the lesson plan is on biodiversity and learning about biodiversity in a real world. So in many cases, natural area near our town must be protected, and because there is a delicate balance to be maintained in these natural areas, but people as a citizen and other people as maybe tourists can freely attend them, and this could be a serious problem because in the long term it can affect the health of the area's biodiversity. Local authorities often do not understand the risk, and so students are asked to conduct this out-of-school research to investigate habitats, ecosystem, biomes, and conditions that can threaten biodiversity in the area that they choose to protect. And they are encouraged to find a solution to advise local authorities on how to better protect the natural area of study. In this lesson plan, there are many subjects, such as biology, geography, and statistics and math, art, of course, and ICT, and also citizenship education, because they do this activity in the real life. In fact, it's possible to analyze the problem of the loss of the biodiversity in the own natural area, and individuate, which are the action that the citizen could do to protect it. So it's a real life question that it's very valuable for students. At the end of this activity, students will be able to understand the relevance of biodiversity, design a diorama. Diorama is a replica of a scene, three-dimensional, full-size or miniature model, typically enclosed in a glass showcase for a museum, but students can be their diorama using a simple they will be able to consult and build a database on pluviometric temperature data. They also can learn how build a thermometric diagram. A thermometric diagram is a graphical representation of a location's basic climate. Climographs display data just for two variables, monthly average temperature and monthly average precipitation. These are useful tools to quickly describe a location's climate. And also they have to discuss together and try to find a solution for to protect the natural area, and of course they have to support their own ideas, maybe in public speaking. Now I'm going to explain my outdoor activity on biodiversity step by step. And first of all, we can start discussing the biodiversity problem in the world and in the natural areas in our town. The students will be asked to play a game in which different group of students represent different habitats and ecosystem. So students will need to figure out what the right habitat is for the animal and or plant card they are given, as they think about the relationship between habitat and animal and plant survival. So the goal, this first step, is helping students understand biodiversity as a measure of a planetary health. In the second step, the students will learn some information about a natural area of their town, if it is possible by community partners of the town, as an organization, museum, and something like that. And they learn something more about maybe the geological site, they can have botanical information, information also on the climate data and so on. At the school, in groups, students will research on websites, picture and information of different aspects of area of investigation. Every group will share own information with the other groups to have as much as possible a complete representation over every aspect of the site. So in this second activity, student can learn more about local habitat. They collect information and also they work all together. In the step third, students have to use meteorological data of the town, maybe data that they have collected by Climate Local Service, maybe. And they have to product a climograph. And obviously they have to the support of their IC teacher, math teacher, and so on. So they, at the end of this step, they will be able to use ITC to represent climate data. And they can go out of school. They will walk in the natural area, and because students are asked to observe, collect and gather materials from the site, from the nature, that are useful to build a diorama of that habitats. The students, of course, will be supported by science and art teachers. In this activity, they learning how describe a habitat creatively, and they have to mimic the real life habitat in their show box with all the natural material that they collected in field. After this, they are asked how it is possible to take care of biodiversity of a natural area of hometown. So they have to think about solution, action, and monitoring plans that citizens could do to preserve biodiversity in the natural area. And so in this way they can learn critical thinking, collaboration, communication, and so on. At the end of the activity, it will be a presentation of the ideas, the good ideas of the different groups, and also a presentation of the work, the diorama realized, and presentation to authorities. I think this is the best way to combine the biodiversity activities with citizenship education. So students can learn how investigate and present in public a technical subject. And I think they could become more confident talking about this particular topic. In conclusion, I think that including STEAM activities in out-of-school learning activity is a great way to combine learning with fun. and channel energy of students into projects that pique their curiosity and reel in their attention to become responsible citizens. So it has been found in research that out-of-school learning can be a great opportunity to discover and develop talents, and especially if a school institution develops a learning environment that guides groups of students in their cooperation in creating a professional and publicly visible product, presentation, or performance. So I hope you enjoyed learning about my STEAM project. Thank you for watching.
Hello, my name is Dr. Cindy Burnett, and I'm the Director of Possibilities for Creativity and Education. Creativity and Education is an organization designed to empower educators and parents around the world to integrate creative thinking skills into their classrooms and homes. I'm also the author of several books, Weaving Creativity into Every Strand of Your Curriculum, 20 Lessons to Weave Creative Thinking into Your Classroom, and My Sandwich is a Spaceship, Creative Thinking for Parents with Young Children. Today, I'm very excited to speak with you about a topic that I find really important in 2022. Today, I'm going to talk to you about weaving creativity into every aspect of your STEAM curriculum. The goals for this session are to understand creativity and the role in your classroom, to identify a set of creative thinking skills, and to learn how to integrate creative thinking skills into your STEAM lessons. So let's get started. Let's start with a definition of creativity. Now, there are many different definitions of creativity out there, but there's one that has stood the test of time, and that is creativity is the production of novel or new and useful ideas. So when we talk about creativity, we have to think about what do we need to do to help our students generate novel and useful ideas. Now, this isn't the perfect definition, but it is a really good starting point. Next, I'd like to show you a componential model that was developed by Harvard researcher Teresa Amabile, and you can see the three intersecting circles. First, Amabile talks about domain skills. Now, domain is the area in which you are working. So science, technology, engineering, arts, math, those are all domain skills. That's the actual content you're trying to teach. Next, you have creativity skills, and that's what we're going to be talking about today. And those are things like risk-taking, generating novel ideas, tolerating ambiguity, being able to be open and aware of new ideas, being mindful, and many others. Finally, we have task motivation. And you can find motivation happens both intrinsically when we're motivated by the things that are internal in us, that passion, and then there's external motivation, which is the carrot, the cookie, and the treat that you offer your students, or even a grade is a motivator. So at the intersection of those three circles, you will find the highest levels of creativity. So what we want to do is merge those domain skills and those creativity skills today so that we can help our students not only develop those important skills that come from STEAM, but also to develop their creative thinking skills. Now, there are two other ways to look at creativity, and one is the expressive side of creativity, and that's typically what's considered the work that really helps us express ourselves in meaningful and authentic ways. It often comes out in the arts. And then there's the improving upon view of creativity, which is the more scientific, cognitive, rational, semantic view of creativity, where we're looking to improve on a process or an object. And I've spent most of my career, I've spent 20 some years in the field of creativity, looking at this intersection and bridge between the expressive side of creativity and the improving upon creativity. And what I found came out of the work of E. Paul Torrance. Now, E. Paul Torrance was known as the father of creativity in education. And over the course of his lifetime, and he died in 2003, he wrote over 2,000 articles, books, and chapters on creativity. And he did a longitudinal study on people who went beyond, and he called these people beyonders. And these beyonders had a certain set of skills, and these were creativity skills. And that's what we're going to be showing you today. Now, let's take a look at these skills that showcase beyonders. You're going to see them on the right-hand side, and let's get a little bit closer. But ultimately, these skills will help you both on the science side of creativity and the art side of creativity. So take a moment and look at these skills, and you can download, I'll make sure I put a link in so you can download these skills. And we also have characters that you can show your students of each of these skills, and these are all free to download. But like any sport, so let's just take swimming, for example. In order to be a good swimmer, it's not just about one thing. It's not just, I'm a good swimmer because I can swim. It's about being able to do the front stroke and the backstroke and the breaststroke and the butterfly. It's about being able to dive and do flips in the water. And it's about being able to hold your breath and how fast you can move and how fast you can kick. There's so many different elements of being a good swimmer. Now, the same is true with creativity. It's not just one thing. It's not just about generating ideas. It's not just about coming up with original ideas. There's a whole set of skills, and that's what these Beyonder skills are. So what I'd like you to do now is hopefully you can download this link and this picture. And what I'd like you to do is take a moment to review the list of skills. Place a star on all the skills you would consider a personal strength. And then place a check mark on the skills that you would like to develop. Now, you can pause this video and come back after you've spent some time exploring these creative thinking skills. Next, we want to talk about your STEAM lessons. So hopefully you brought something along today that we can play with. Now, I have worked with educators for the last 15 years. And when they are interested in creativity, they will often come to me and they have two pressing questions. They say, Cindy, I know I want to bring creativity into my classroom. I think it's really important, but how do I actually do it? And how do I do it when I'm pressed for time? And so that's where weaving creativity comes into play. So in weaving creativity, you have those content skills, those domain skills that we talked about earlier, and creativity skills, and you merge them together to create your lesson. So you have your content lesson, that thing that you want to teach in STEAM, and then you pick a creativity skill from the list that I gave you. And then you come up with ideas to merge them together. So let's take a really basic example that most STEAM educators use, which is creating a rocket ship of some sort. So you probably across your curriculum have a rocket ship or an airplane that you have your students create. If not, I'll include a link in this lesson plan. But what we would like you to do is think about the things that you normally do when you're teaching about this rocket ship. And we're going to add a few different dimensions to it by weaving these skills in. First, we're going to try being aware of emotions. So being aware of emotions is all about being conscious of feelings, using, trusting, and responding to emotions and other people's feelings. Now, what's really interesting about this is you can take being aware of emotions and you can take that rocket ship and you can merge them together in your lesson. So an easy way to do this is before you even get started to say to your students, hey, guess what we're going to be doing today? We're going to be building an aircraft of the future. How do you feel about that? And then give them a sheet of paper or even a simple Post-it note and say, I want you to create emoji of how you feel about creating an aircraft of the future. Now, by doing this, you have them aware of their emotions while you go into the lesson. And a way you can end this lesson is just to ask them at the end, so how do you feel now that you've created the rocket ship or the airplane? And you have another Post-it next to it. So you can assess just by looking around the room how your students are feeling and are aware of their emotions about this particular exercise. And you can incorporate this exercise into any lesson, which is great. But I wanted to show you with regard to the rocket ship. Let's take another skill with the same content. Let's get glimpses of the future. Now, this is about predicting, imagining, and exploring ideas that don't yet exist. And this is a great skill to bring into your STEAM lessons. So how do you get your students to think about the future and imagine the future? So what we're going to do is we're going to use that same rocket ship, and we're going to get glimpses of the future. And what you can have your students do is have your students, before you start, have your students close their eyes and imagine an aircraft of the future. What does it look like? What does it feel like? What is it able to do? And after you've given them some time to imagine this aircraft of the future, have a discussion about it. What would an aircraft of 2040 look like, or 2050? What are you able to do on it? What are you able to eat or drink? What does it smell like? What does it look like? So you could do a whole piece around this aircraft of the future before they even begin. So again, you're taking that domain skill and you're taking that creativity skill and you're merging them together to create your ideas. Finally, I want to show you one more example of integrating a creative thinking skill in with the same lesson of the aircraft. And this skill is about producing and considering many alternatives. And this is really divergent thinking. So imagine you're going to your class and you're going to have them build this rocket ship. And this time you want them to produce and consider many alternatives. So what if you were to have your students generate possible names for this future aircraft, and you have them aim for at least 10 or maybe 20, or maybe you have them do it in small groups and they could generate 100 names for this aircraft. This is a great way to bring in divergent thinking while you're teaching them about the basics of designing an aircraft. So now it's time to look at your STEAM lessons. Here's my recommendation on how to get started. First, pick a lesson that you don't particularly like teaching, because this will also help your lessons become more engaging and more fun for both the students as well for you. So pick a lesson that you don't enjoy teaching and then look at the list of skills. Select a skill that you might want to use and deliberately bring it in. Don't be afraid to use the language of these creative thinking skills. Wow, that was great risk-taking. I'd love for you to embrace the challenge. Oh, this is going to be a bit tricky. We're going to ask you to tolerate the ambiguity. Now, you're probably looking at this list and saying, wow, I already do this a lot in my STEAM lessons. A lot of this is natural. Great, it should be natural. And I will tell you that I've done hundreds of workshops on weaving creativity into the classroom. And what I found most exciting was teachers going through the ideas and generating ideas and saying, wow, I actually do a lot of this already in my classroom. Now, as I told you, I did a lot of workshops on this, and all these ideas were combined together because one teacher said to me, you are going to turn this into a book, right? So the first book that I wrote was Weaving Creativity into Every Strand of Your Curriculum, which has over 1,000 ideas on how to deliberately bring creative thinking skills into your classroom. And then after that book was released, we had lots of teachers coming back to us saying, actually, we also need a script of exactly how we can integrate these skills in with any content. Can you build us something like that? So together with my colleague Lila Schnapp, we designed 20 lessons to weave creative thinking skills into your curriculum. You can purchase these books on Amazon, as well as our website at creativityandeducation.com. You can also obtain the first 2 chapters for free on our website. I would love to encourage you to check out our YouTube station, Creativity, where we have dozens of activities that you can do with your students in the classroom to help nurture creative thinking skills. I also have a Fueling Creativity in Education podcast where we interview the leading scholars, thinkers, and practitioners in the field of creativity and education. And you have lots of tips that you can obtain from listening to those podcast episodes. And finally, check out Creativity in Education for lots of free resources, tips, techniques, and strategies. We have lots of blog posts on STEAM to look at how you can do this in your classroom. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me at Cyndi, CYNDI, at creativityandeducation.com. Thanks so much for joining me today and have a wonderful day.
Hello to all again. I'm Miroko Liakou, member of the EASE board from Thessaloniki, Greece, Anatolia College STEM Center. Thank you, Giuseppina, for proposing a STEAM lesson plan on biodiversity. Biodiversity is indeed a very important topic, a topic connected to climate change and human interference, key areas of the green sustainable education curriculum. Green education can act as a vehicle in order to inspire the next generation of students to pursue a career in science. Empowering youth to create a sustainable future is critical in the process of preserving the planet and in educating future responsible citizens. With the green education curriculum, a science subject which may be considered abstract is put in a familiar context relevant to the everyday life of the students. The European Union is making great efforts to support educators with topics related to green sustainable education. I urge you all to check out the EU initiative Education for Climate Coalition or look into other projects that are being developed around Europe, such as the Erasmus Plus project Green Education for a Sustainable Future. One of the most important 21st century skills identified today is creativity. And one question that almost always comes up when educators are talking about creativity is how can we teach creativity? How can we help our students become more creative? Many thanks to Cyndi Burnett from Buffalo for presenting a set of creative thinking skills that you can actually apply into any STEAM lesson you teach. Don't forget to look into the Creativity in Education platform in order to learn more about this really interesting pedagogical approach. Thank you all again for these inspiring presentations. Let's move on and enjoy the rest of the EASE Summit.
شكل السفاسف
Hello everyone! We are very happy to attend the first European Summit for STEAM educators. I will do my best to use the time efficiently. First of all, I would like to introduce myself. My name is Arda. I am the founder of Dijital Çağ Atölyesi. Now, let me start introducing our makerspace. We are a social enterprise that has been organizing workshops for children for 5 years in Ankara, the capital of Turkey. We operate within Top University of Economics and Technology. We are the one of the best makerspace in Turkey. The number we are about to show you prove it. Our main mission is to teach children the culture of production in digital world and turn them into makers. Officially, we are the first and only organization in Turkey that has the features of the makerspace, hackerspace, and Fab Lab together. We are a social enterprise with international identity. We are a FabLabs.io approved Fab Lab. You can see this from the map I will show you now. When you enter the official MIT.edu website, you see the labs button here. If you click the labs button, you will go directly the Fab Labs map around the world. Let me go closer to my country. Unfortunately, the number of Fab Labs in our country is not very high. But we have a Fab Lab Turkey project that will soon gather all Fab Labs under one roof. As we are pioneering in many issues in the country, we will be the flag bearer in this regard. When you look at the international makerspace and hackerspace maps, this is international makerspace maps. If you go closer, you will see our makerspace right there. This is the international hackerspace map. If you go closer to Turkey, you will see our hackerspace right there. When you look at the international makerspace and hackerspace maps, you can also find our workshop. I don't think you will have any difficulty in finding us, since there are few of these in our country. We are a team that tries to spread the production culture in digital world in the country in waves, and we are successful in this regard. If you wish, let me tell you about these achievements. Actually, it would be the best to describe our achievements in two parts: our educational achievements and our software awards. First of all, I would like to talk about our educational achievements. As the Dijital Çağ Atölyesi team, in total, we organized maker programs for over 900 students and successfully graduated them. We were able to reach more than 7,000 students through the fairs, festivals, and competitions we organized. As I mentioned in the previous slides, we have an international network. With a visionary perspective, we have always organized workshops that were the first in Turkey, such as Metaverse, NFT, Web3, etc. workshops. Thanks to all these things, we were selected as the best social enterprise of the year by School Association in Turkey 2019. In 2021, we collaborate with Microsoft Meko team on the contest for children. In 2022, we were nominated for Education 2 Outstanding Leadership Award in Dubai. But what about our softwares? As you can imagine, it will be the deficiency for a team that tries to teach maker culture to children not to produce their own product. For this reason, we developed two softwares that we use in our classes. Actually, both of them are very new softwares, but we are proud of both of them. These are Actrus, formerly known as VR for Kids, and of course Artbot. Let's take a closer look at what they mean. VR for Kids now we call Actress, is a virtual reality content production platform. Children upload their own 3D content to this platform and then start walking around in the world. It's currently in closed beta test and only the kids in our workshop are trying it out. Another one, ArfBot. ArfBot is a safe Turkish search engine for kids, just like Kiddle.com, but in Turkish and much more free. ArfBot has its own game, blog, and contest subdomains. Children can use the blog section like an encyclopedia, while in the game section they can play safe games created by their peers. The last subdomain is competition. First, let's take a look at the awards that ArfBot and Actress receive. Finalists in West Alvenus competition, Bilkent Cyberpark Office Award, Ankara Development Agency's 100 Best Projects Award of Turkey, Istanbul Aydın University's Image Tomorrow finalist, and Turkey Information Foundation Coding Awards. But we think the most important is that arfbot.com is now used as a homepage in the computer labs of 204 schools. This number will continue exponentially. This is precisely why the competition, which will organize for the second time this year, is great importance. Now, let's go to our topic. So, I'm going to explain differences between Makerspace, FabLab, and Hackerspace to you. First of all, Dijital Çağ Atölyesi is a makerspace at Top University of Economics and Technology. But what's makerspace? Shortly, it's about exploring and discovering new ideas and creating and building. It's about trying something new. And when you fail, trying it again. Most of all, it's about finding your patience and then sharing them with others. A makerspace is a collaborative workspace inside a school, library, university, or separate public-private facility for making, learning, exploring, and sharing that uses high-tech to no-tech tools. These spaces are open to kids, adults, entrepreneurs, and have a variety of maker equipment including 3D printers, laser cutters, robotic kits, soldering irons, and even sewing machines. A makerspace, however, doesn't need to include all these machines or even any of them be considered a makerspace. If you have cardboard, Legos, and art supplies, you are in business. These spaces are also helping to prepare those who need the critical 21st century skills in the fields of science, technology, engineering, art, and math, let's call STEAM. They provide hands-on learning, help with critical thinking skills, and even boost self-confidence. Some of the skills that are learned in a makerspace pertain to electronics, 3D printing, 3D modeling, coding, robotics, even woodworking. Makerspace are also frustrating entrepreneurship and are being utilized as incubators and accelerators for business startups. Now that you have the bird's eye view of Makerspace, let's dig a little deeper. Makerspaces have been called everything from a fab lab to a tech shop to a hackerspace. Is there any differences between these names? Yes and no. They are all places for making, collaborating, learning, and sharing. Although these spaces have a lot in common, they are also different in a few ways. Dijital Çağ Atölyesi is also a fab lab. But wait, what's fab lab? Fab labs were started by professor of Massachusetts Institute of Technology Neil Gershenfeld at the Center for Bits and Atoms in MIT's Media Lab. A Fab Lab is a small-scale workshop offering digital fabrication. They define a Fab Lab in their own words as a technical prototyping platform for innovation and invention, providing stimulus for local entrepreneurship. It is also a platform for learning and innovation, a place to play, to create, to learn, to mentor, to invent. So that's why Dijital Çağ Atölyesi has been an MIT approved Fab Lab since 2020. Dijital Çağ Atölyesi is also a hackerspace. Okay, but what's differences between a hackerspace and others? In order to understand the differences between hackerspace and makerspace, we need to do short history lesson. The beginning of hackerspace can be traced back to 1995 Berlin when the world's first hackerspace called C-Based was launched. The concept of hackerspace started as a place in the community where a group of computer programmers could collectively meet, work, and share infrastructure. They would hack technology and try to make it do something it wasn't meant to do. This term of hacking or hacker in the computer sense soon progressed and expanded into the hacking of physical objects as we know it today. Over the years, the price of maker tools such as 3D printers, desktop laser cutters, and CNC routers became more affordable, and hackerspace naturally evolved into makerspace. Wikipedia defines a hackerspace as a community-operated workspace where people with common interests, often in computers, technology, science, and digital art, can meet, socialize, and collaborate. Those are also the same characteristic you will find in a makerspace. The problem with the term hackerspace is unfortunate negative image people of a hacker. Finally, thank you very much for your interest. You can follow us on social media for more things we forgot to tell you. We are so happy to attend this summit. Thank you for Mr. Nelson, moderator. Have a nice event. Goodbye.
Dijital Çağ Atölyesi Genel Koordinatörü ve Eğitmeni Sayın Arda Aslan'ın konuşmasını yapmak üzere sahneye davet ediyorum.
Merhabalar, VR Makers ekibi. İsmim Arda Aslan. Projemizin adı VR Çocuk. Projemizin konusu ise çocukları teknolojiyi tüketmekten üretime yönlendirecek bir sanal gerçeklik platformu. Ve çocukları birlikte teknolojiyi üretmelerini istiyoruz.
Bugün size Estonya'dan Türkiye'ye bir sosyal girişimcilikten bahsedeceğim. Dijital çağ atölyesi ama bunun daha öncesi var.
İleri teknoloji bizim için şart, savunma sanayi.
Top Etü, çocuklar için de dijital çağ atölyesi.
Hi everybody, I'm Alessandra Angelucci and I'm a mathematics and physics teacher at a high school in Rome, Liceo Scientifico Plinio Signore, and I'm here today to talk with you about symmetry, beauty and truth. Okay, I put myself in the right position. Since the dawn of time, the human beings been looking for regularities to calm anguish and fears. Regularity like a heartbeat, alternation of day and night, lunar cycles, seasons, rites. On another side, survival is required the ability to distinguish edible from poisonous and dangerous from not dangerous. Can you see the gap out? J.D. Barrows wrote, perhaps the basic of all is an ability to sense and classify patterns. On another side still, when our knowledge is young, we consider regularity relaxing and symmetry beautiful. Then we grow up, I hope. But the idea that natural phenomena follow a principle of symmetry characterize important results in both classical and modern physics. Nether's theorem ascribes all laws of conservation to symmetry, and Maxwell and Einstein results expressed symmetry need. In conclusion, provisional, symmetries intertwine two of the essential traits for research for humans, that of beauty and that of truth. Today I propose a path for first, second, or second year of high school involving the following subjects: art, physics, mathematics, literature. I hope you can find activities also for younger or older students. Pattern is in Islamic art. In the algebra, we use instrument for symmetry, reflected object in a line or in point to reproduce patterns. In physics, we'll examine reflection laws and how virtual images are formed. In mathematics, we talk about axial and central symmetry and how introduce it to students. And in literature, visual poetry and quatrains offers interesting example of symmetries. Let's go. Pattern in Islamic art. I take information in images from this website. Thank you. That you can explore by yourself. Very interesting, very rich. You and your colleagues can find also materials for geography, history of religions. The fact is that limitation of reproducing human images led Islamic artists to create wonderful geometric ornaments, and the enormous extension of the Islamic Empire allows to find examples of this art in many parts of the world. Egypt, Syria, India, Iran, Morocco, Spain, Transoxania, Turkey, etc. We'll see how to make this design that I took to the website using the free app GeoGebra to build together the figure on the right. I think that you still know this website or app. It's very intuitive to use, but of course you have to practice, and you can find tools in web or try by yourself, knowing that every time you take an instrument, bottom left appears instructions. Okay, now I need to put some point on the plane, and I choose this way with the coordinates because it's the faster one. -7, 6. You can draw with me, or if you have a pencil and paper or a smartphone or a computer. It's quite simple to do, or rather it's like a wrong syntax. Number, comma, number, enter means 5. Okay. Comma, -4, 7. Okay. -10, 10. Okay. Are they correct? Yes. Now I take the instrument polygon and I connect points A, B, C, D, E, and I have to come back to the first one. Okay, now I color my figure. Okay, settings, color. I choose the original color, but you can choose the color you want. Right? It was that. Now I can hide points useless. Make attention, because if you delete point, figure disappear, and you have to ask the help or undo. So you have to hide points you don't use, using, for example, these possibilities. Okay. We want to apply the symmetry to the point C. So I leave this point C. I select my figure. I take a reflect object in point. I select the point, and I have my first part of my picture. Then I select all. I take reflect object in line. I choose the axis Y as a line. I move here. I select all the figure. Okay. I take another time reflect object in line. I choose let's work. I repeat. What's this part? I do another time. It does another time. That mouse is not using. Okay. Well, I complete my figure. Zoom out, watch it away, make that new. Well, I can hide access and read. And I hide also the blue point. Not that the symmetrical of every point is the point itself. So I have to hide 2 points in any position. That's clear. If you watch the figure, you can see that I have to hide 2 points every time. Voila. Come on. Voila. Ecco the figures. I promised. Go. So I propose to start working with symmetries without define them, to train students to recognize them. As a reminder, we use the GeoGebra instruments polygon, reflection in line, reflection in point. And you can explore the website, searching, looking for other figures, and playing with students to recognize symmetries in figures. Okay. The physics reflection in laws. Given a mirror M, and a point on the mirror, and source of light, if a ray of light reflect and arrive to the mirror, reflect, arrive on the position E complete, like E. And following this law, LO and E stays in the same plane, and the incident angle A and the reflection angle beta are equals. And with an experiment, students can verify the second law. This short video of 6 minutes shows how they can do at school or at home. It's very simple. Watch a little part together. Okay. Start. I double the speed. Voila. Okay. I jump first 2 minutes. Not very interesting. Okay. In these 2 minutes, they draw 2 lines, the perpendicular line. You can take the goniometer and mark an angle 30 degrees. Make attention, because that's a mistake on the video. I draw the line OA. Now we place the mirror on the line MM and place to pin, no, we name the line. Okay. We fix 2 pins vertically on the line mirror. And watch mistake, it's not 16, 60, but 30. Okay, now I have the images in the mirror, and the play is to find a position where the images, the points are aligned, because it means that the reflection will achieve my eyes and hypothetical ray and passing through 2 pins. You can realize this experiment also with lasers. You know if what's more dangerous, if pins or lasers with your students. Now you fix 2 of the pins always on the same lines, 2, because in this way they can draw more precisely a line. I remove that, I remove all, I mark the position, I draw a line of the letter, remove all, I connect 2 points with all, and with the manometer, I measure and I check. It's the same, the reflection angle is the same. Yes, the law is verified. Simple and funny and easy. Okay. And go ahead. So, in this, not too fast. When the rays are 2, or more than 2, they reflect on the mirror and hit our eyes, and our brain prolongs these reflected rays until the virtual image that is inside the mirror. Okay, and because our mind can accept nonsense. This video that we can show to you, I will watch together too long or too difficult. There is a mathematical proof that the virtual image is symmetrical to the object with respect to the mirror. But I suggest you to show this video if you want, after discussing with the mathematical definitions or after making an activity. It's even more complicated. Mathematical definition. So, first activity, student used symmetries to make drawings and learn to recognize them in physical phenomena. But it started from the experiences they made. You can ask them to try to define symmetries. It's very interesting to read their proposals. Then you can take to them the correct definition. Points A and the first are symmetrical to a line R, if and only if R is the axis of the segment A first. And given a figure bread, if I draw the symmetric of each vertex, I get a symmetric figure blue. And I can see that red and blue are specular. I use that data. But we have also figures that are symmetric with respect to a line, like them itself, simple in sort. Okay. We can say that a figure is symmetrical to a line if this line divides it into 2 specular figures. There are mathematical definitions more specific, more precise, but I think that it's enough. It's understandable by students. And the specular figures, we defined that before what specular figures means. In the general use of the central point symmetry, and 2 points B and B first are symmetrical to a third point O if and only if O is the midpoint with segment the first. Okay, that's precise. If I draw the symmetric of every vertex of a figure, I have 2 figures opposites. it's not, I don't know if it exists, but it's almost clear, it's understandable, like before. And last but not least, the precise definition is very, very difficult, but I beg the students one task. If at each pair of opposite points are symmetrical to a point in a figure, we can say that this figure is symmetrical to a point. Opposite points is not completely precise, but I repeat, the correct definition is very, very, very hard. So we arrive to literature, and with visual poetry, we can play, we can join mathematics and literature, and to know what calligrams are, we can use Wikipedia. It's a good source. There's a lot of little bit of story, some examples. You can imagine that activities are different. Huh? You can build a symmetrical figure and then write a poem on the side, or fill them with a poem. It's on you. But to close our circle, another proposal, quatrains of Omar Khayyam, that connect literature with Islamic art, because Omar Khayyam was a Persian mathematician, philosopher, astronomer of 11th century, mentioned on the parrot theorem of Dennis Galley. It's a very interesting novel about the story of mathematics. Very, very interesting, very fun. Activity proposed are two. Do a research on Omar Khayyam and Islamic art in the century, and write quatrains. Learn to write quatrains. How to write a quatrain poem, and we can ask to WikiHow. There's a lot of explanation. It's very clear. It's very easy. I don't go more inside because it's late. Okay. Circle closed. We started with Islamic art, and we finish with that. If you want to go ahead in art, Cosmos explores and Gaudiya rosettes, cool radial symmetry, and in architectural elements, there's a lot of symmetries, and you can arrive to talking about contemporary art and how symmetries became broken. In physics, every level of conservation called symmetry, thermodynamic principle, conservation of momentum, Gauss theorem application, in a little bit Maxwell equation, not completely, relativity of Galilei and Einstein, and this thing on the opposite, the second thermodynamic principle talk about the breaking of symmetry. Mathematics, we have also circular reversal, very interesting, in tessellations, in Euclidean and non-Euclidean geometry. And in literature, after learning to write patterns, I hope the students appreciate more patterns of William Shakespeare. And as in art and physics, we can appreciate also how and why vanguards go back in symmetries. So we finished. Thank you for your attention. I hope that you find something interesting on your activities or your job. And thanks a lot to Hayes to having me in this summit, and good continuation to everybody. Bye-bye at the next occasion. Bye.
Hello, my name is Lidia Aristea. I am ICT teacher at a secondary school from Ploiești, Romania. In this presentation, I will present you augmented reality. Last year, I was pilot school and pilot teacher in an international project, Arete, supported by Arete European SchoolNet, and the project was Arete for Geography. Last year, between September 2021 and June 2022, in the classroom, I also implemented more activities with the students based on STEM education. The project had more stages. The first was install the application on the devices, use this application in the classroom, fill out in the notebook using information on the internet, apply in the classroom pre-test, post-test, and retention test, and at the end identify the correct responses. Next step was using the application in the classroom and try each menu of the application. The interface of the application is very useful, easy to use, and each menu, animals, plants, water, and other menus, under had tests. The teacher and the students try these tests and create some screenshots with the images from the application. Using flashcards, the students had the possibility to see some species about plants, animals, mammals, create screenshots, and at the end realize multimedia presentation or documentary movie. After identify the species using information on the internet, the students filled out in the notebook and wrote about species, plants, animals, and mammals, some descriptions, and they had to communicate, collaborate, and cooperate about this. This presentation is an opportunity for other teachers to identify and to apply in the classroom. Next slide. This is the interface of the application, and it's very easy and useful for students to find, to identify from the menu all the information and apply and try all tests in the classroom. Next step was creating a learning scenario and apply to the classroom. Learning scenario had more phases. The first phase was ice-breaking exploration, where the students had to collaborate, cooperate, and communicate. Discovery learning. Discover how can they use the menus from the application, how can they try and respond all questions from each test. Next step and next stage was investigation. In this phase, I proposed to the students a teamwork. If I will be a future specialist in an environmental protection, I would take the following measures. What they have to do if we become future specialists, and wrote and they wrote in the notebook some idea and some information about this. When the students tried the test about animals, plants and mammals, they saw images and information about some species, plants, animals, science, mammals. And when the response was correct, is a funny image. This response was perfect. Next question, very funny, and was the response was wrong, another sound, you didn't receive correct, try again. For applying a test to all students, the teacher had to connect on the application. After this, it was generated a code, and the students had to join and wrote the code on their devices. The teacher had the possibility to see all students connecting to the test, to see the results, the state, and the time spent on this test. At the end, finish the test and send to all students the responses and the points obtained by students. In the debate phase, the students had the possibility to understand of new vocabulary about climate change and identify some positive elements about its onset and effects on all species. What are the causes and what they should to do about climate change, how can protect all species, and wrote in the notebook the information. One of the applications can be applied and used in the classroom is Cleverbooks. The teachers can create an account on the platform Cleverbooks and install the application Cleverbooks on the devices. After this, can select for educators and identify from the list one lesson plan, a lesson plan, or create a mix from more lesson plans, or create a new lesson plan about geography, engineering, science, and other fields. This is my presentation, and thank you for your attention.
What a beautiful section of presentations we just heard and went through. Arda from Turkey talked about the maker spaces and the work they're doing in Turkey. What a wonderful journey with impressive awards and the number of lives they are touching of children, moving them to become makers. Wonderful work. It was also very interesting to see that they are touching upon all the new and emerging topics in technology, be it metaverse or NFTs, so that the students of today are prepared for tomorrow. Wonderful. We had a lovely presentation by Alessandra as well, who talked about her work as a physics teacher in Rome. Very, very interesting work, especially about her link from symmetry to beauty and truth. What a wonderful way to bring together literature and physics and art all together to make it meaningful for the students. Doing mirror experiments with pins, something very practical, I'm sure was something that all of you really enjoyed today. Looking forward to the next set of presentations.
Hello, everyone. We're here to talk about STEM today, and we have 3-4 very nice people who want to talk about it, and we want to discuss it with all of you. This live event is about STEM and STEAM and science and schools and around schools, and we're going to start today with Joe and Richard. So Joe has been a teacher, educator, and director of a flagship creative learning organization. She is a sociologist with. Oh, I have to do it again. Sorry. Okay, I'll start again. Okay. Joe has been a teacher, educator, and director of a flagship creative learning organization. She is a sociologist with a long-standing research interest in arts-based practices in a range of educational settings. Her recent research projects have identified the value of art making for developing children's confidence in their learning and creativity, and has a site for integrated art, science, STEAM learning. Richard is an academic, educationalist, and a formal educator. His research is primarily in philosophical approaches to educational policy and practice. At the moment, Richard is working on what we mean by upbringing, and in particular, what it means to be a mature, educated adult. He also works on developing of hybrid curricula, especially drawing together STEAM and the arts. So welcome, Joe and Richard. The floor is yours.
Okay, thanks very much. We'll just pull up the PowerPoint and start that running. Okay. There we are. Okay.
Well, thank you for inviting us to the EASE Summit to join with Fiorella and Ronan to discuss the whole issue of STEAM education. We're going to talk today about designing authentic STEAM education. And we have a couple of provocations for you. First of all, we want to talk a little bit about the need for a coherent account of STEAM education, one which affirms the value of STEAM. And secondly, we want to talk about why it's important to focus on the real world. And thirdly, about the implications for the way in which we structure school curricula. So to start with that first point about a coherent account, we believe that in order to defend and improve and develop STEAM approaches, we either need to be extensively evaluating the individual projects that we undertake, or to develop coherent accounts and taxonomies of what STEAM activities are. And we believe the second approach has several advantages, whether that's politically, economically, or practically.
Okay, so what we want to propose is the need for an account which affirms the value, the distinctive value of STEAM education, and overcomes a way in which STEAM has reflected discontent with educational policy and practice. So we did a review of STEAM projects, particularly around the UK, but also looked at international examples. And we categorized that one of the key issues with those STEAM practices and the conversations about them was they reflected simply a discontent with educational policy and practice, most often with the dominance of STEM within education systems.
And it's perhaps worth noticing at this point that schools typically teach science and maths, sometimes technology, very rarely engineering. And so the relevance of STEAM to formal schooling, in our experience, remains a tension. And it's been fueled by arguments for a more creative approach to science education and the need to broaden curricula that have become dominated by STEM.
So recent research and practice, and I think this is reflected in practice, suggests that there's some valuable core characteristics related to transdisciplinarity that STEAM educators could claim as their own. There are a couple of papers out with US colleagues, and we have a paper hopefully coming out beginning of next year covering the same kind of area. And what that focuses is it focuses attention on the real world. So STEAM is often seen as an integration of science and the arts, with engineering and technology missed out, primarily because they're not there regularly in the school curriculum. It also misses out maths, but we'll leave that aside for the moment. We argue, though, that whereas science is a discipline, engineering and technology are practices, and they're transdisciplinary practices. That is, the elements of the arts, sciences, and social sciences are inherently interconnected. In order to do engineering, in order to do various forms of technology, robotics, etc., you need to be able to draw upon the arts, the sciences, and the social sciences in ways which can't be pulled apart. And we think that's an important element in terms of STEAM and the future for STEAM education. Thus, focusing on the real world enables an inherently STEAM education experience in which the various components are fully integrated in practice and that pupils can engage in that inherently integrated experience.
So in the last stage of our provocations, looking at the implications for the school curricula, our contribution to the taxonomic question about how we might characterise this is to identify an issue in relation to the segmentation of the curriculum into disciplinary time periods. And it's something that Richard and I have written about. Our 2021 paper, The Culture of Disciplines, argues for this differently. Whereas the curriculum divides subjects into areas like science, history, maths, and has limited integration, we argue that STEAM enables a multicultural unification of the cultures of different disciplines, so that science lessons can be both culturally scientific and culturally artistic. And in fact, the layering of these lens in a dual way, in the way that we propose in our TAME model, you'll see the diagram behind us, and we'll refer to that again at the end, is a way forward. And to approach in that way, to review the school curriculum in that way, allows for a more explicit understanding of the various cultures of different disciplines that underpin STEAM practices. For example, the practices of robotics. And it also prevents the kind of manipulation, the twisting of lesson plans by teachers trying to artificially bring subject areas together, so bringing the arts into their STEM lessons. Instead, this real-world approach requires the subject areas to be brought together in ways that are experienced as valuable.
So thanks very much for listening. We'd love to keep the conversation going. There are our contact details. We're based and we focus on English education, so it may be different in different parts of the world, and we'd love to continue that conversation going. Thanks very much.
Thank you so much, Joe and Richard, for this 6-minute presentation. Next, we have Firella. Firella.
Yes.
Are you there?
I am here.
Hi. Firella is educated in philosophy and collaborated with the Italian Research Council on the social impact of advanced robotics application. In 2000, she founded the Scuola di Robotica, School of Robotics Society, and is its vice chair today. Fiorella contributed to the definition and development of roboethics, ethical, legal, and societal issues in robotics. She is member of the High-Level Advisory Committee for European Center of Human and Technology, and consultant and member of the Open Robo Ethics Initiative. She is the Italian partner of the European Robotics Weeks and member of the executive board of the Foundation for Responsible Robotics. Fiorella, welcome.
Thank you.
Going to share your presentation.
Thank you. And if you could go on, let's say, every 2 minutes. No, 1 minute and a half. Thank you.
Okay. Let me share my screen.
Shall I go on?
Just a minute.
Yeah.
I think it's this one. Oh, sorry. Yeah. Okay, you can start.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Thank you, Anna, and Richard and Joe for your presentation. I will try to link up to your topics because are close to my project, our project. First of all, let me introduce Scuola di Robotica, School of Robotics, a no-profit society who was funded 20 years ago by a commune project by humanistic, and engineering. So we really stressed the need to promote the coexistence, but peaceful coexistence of these two lines of investigation and research. And we thought that robotics could be a platform to unite those two lines that were divided since the 17th century. Now, robotics is, on one side, intelligence in a physical machine. And so you have physical on one side and intelligence, let's say spiritual, quote unquote, side of the investigation. Now, the most critical issue we felt in engineering and in physics and hard science since many, many centuries is the underrepresentation of women in this field of technology. And this is a lack of ingenuity and creativity from another side of the planet that really is felt, you know. But this problem is not an easy problem, is a social and cultural problem and cannot be solved in a minute. It's a problem related mainly to stereotypes and how women are seen in societies today. Girl students now are very good at school. And as you see, you know, they are even better than male students. They are more thoughtful. They are more committed, you know, to study. But then at a certain point, they drop out. And you see in this slide that 41 or 40, more than 41 years ago, this phenomena was already investigated, and it's called the glass ceiling. You know, the women, girls, they can start, you know, their career or their school career in science and technology, but at a certain point they drop out. Again, the reasons are multiple and are grounded in society, not in girls. But to tackle this problem, we need to have, in my view, another approach than the old one, like role models, etc. Because role models are important, but that means that you must be a kind of Wonder Woman, that only few women will be allowed to reach this level of career. In my view, we have to dramatically increase the number of girls involved in STEM from all possible subjects, from arts, geography, philosophy. I come from philosophical CV, history, storytelling, engineering. Every subject could be, in a sense, used to upgrade robotics. And this is precisely the stage in which robotics is it now, where more subjects, more topics should be used to advance robotics today. Now, to do this, we need different programs, not dividing subject by, topics by subject, like geography, etc., putting together and using these physical objects that can be programmed to enhance the ability of girls to change the world, That's why we use in robotics one methodology that is care for girls, and the other is service learning. So girls are programming these little kids to solve the problem of our planet, problem of poverty, etc., etc. So I really would advise teachers from preschool students, to higher education to use robotics, because robotics can be really used in every subject and for every solution of many, many problems. And I tell you, girls are absolutely fantastic. They code beautifully, and they understand the environment and how robots can be used to solve problems in a beautiful way. Thank you. I would like to greet the Dreamers, the Afghan group that won the first global some years ago, and now they cannot work anymore in Afghanistan. Thank you, Dreamers.
Thank you, Fiorella. Okay. Thank you. So now we have time to talk to each other and comment on each other's presentation. Joe and Richard, you want to go first?
Yeah, I mean, as you know, we agree with much of the analysis here in terms of the need for starting early, because we think it's pretty much a global issue that whenever girls have a choice, however good they are at science and technology, when they have a choice, they tend to drop science for a whole bunch of very good reasons. But nevertheless, we want to be able to find ways in which to encourage them to engage and continue to engage in science. And one way of doing that is to overcome a rather artificial divide between science and the arts, and between science, arts, and humanities, as though these things are different areas of human experience, rather than, in fact, most of the time, very much about practice. We're using technology here, but it's also a social, it's an artistic experience, not just a technological experience. And that's what society's like. And the fact that schools separate these things out seems in itself a little odd.
And I think,
yes, please.
Sorry, I just felt that Fiorella's point about beginning early is something that I think is also very important to note. She'll be aware from her own gender studies how significantly early children identify their own gender identity, and the associated language and behaviours around that start to separate out particular kind of practices and behaviours as being okay or not okay in relation to particular genders. Certainly, we know from research that's happened in the UK that the kind of language that tends to be used by adults towards girls tends to instinctively limit their exploration, tends to direct them towards certain kinds of play as opposed to being different from boys. So boys are more often given construction toys, more problem-solving toys visually from an early age, whereas girls tend to be given more imaginative play. And those reflect kind of historical views of women's role in society. Where those divides are broken down is in this kind of interdisciplinary, transdisciplinary practice. So the kind of examples that Fiora was talking about in relation to robotics with girls is a great example of that. And certainly in my work, working with the Imaginarium, working in an engineering and arts project, one of the things that was quite interesting was working with children who were as young as kind of 8 or 9. They'd already got from their own experience in society and their own learning from their parents, a sense that actually, the hard metal of engineering is what was meant by engineering for a start off. It was about fixing things. It was about hard male tasks. And the notion that it might be a kind of resource or a practice that would be useful artistically, or that things that appeared hard could actually have softer, more colourful, more interdisciplinary needs, was something that was a surprise to them. But when they discovered it, then suddenly there was a real fascination and faith and interest in engineering and technology as a way of making change.
I like very much your approach, art making model, because this destroys also another very dangerous stereotypes vis-a-vis males, because also male, boys are in a sense still the engineering. You are nodding, so I understand. I got that you got my point. That also this engineering, square, insensible to beauty, insensible to social effects, is also bad for boys. It's also a stereotype for boys, because there are boys that are full of artistic attitude, and they go to video games.
Yeah,
video games, and please go also a movie, please. So I like your approach, and also because beauty, we lack. Our cities are ugly. We do not keep beauty in our mind, while beauty is precisely the only way to make things intelligible.
I'm absolutely with you on that. Again, if I refer back to the Imaginarium project, I originally was going to do analysis that was going to be gendered in character, but what I discovered was so many boys were also released by this way of working, able to discover, to admit that they wrote poetry, to admit that actually it really mattered to them how their friends felt about the work. So working collaboratively and getting ideas from different people, and the idea that they could be, they could think both about the beauty, the color, the shape, the texture of something, the effect of something, as well as learning about the science was something that they hadn't really been allowed to kind of voice.
Yes, I understand what you mean. Yeah.
We did a little project last year because it was Coventry City of Culture in the UK. And we did a little project in Coventry where we just asked children supported by artists and designers to redesign Coventry as a city. Obviously, Coventry's been redesigned several times, particularly, it was kind of been iconic after the Second World War. It was rebuilt. But asking them to rebuild, and the number of children that came up with really imaginative and aesthetically interesting ways, so walkways, that grass on roof, that there should be great places to be able to get to exercise around the city centre, that the buildings should be multi-purpose and they should be open spaces, and really thinking about not just what can we build in terms of the mechanics of what we can build, but also the aesthetics of what do we want to build for our city. It was really interesting to work that through in terms of models. I don't think the city council are going to allow them to build that kind of coventry, but nevertheless, it was a really interesting project to have them working through in a quite an informal environment. And some of the teachers we've been working with the last couple of years, one of the pairs, the two teachers in the school, have taken forward a what do we think our future city should look like project that they're working with their school going forward year on year. And that will be about, not a whole of a half term, but they're going to be spending maybe 6 or 7 days over a half term, which is 6 or 7 weeks in the UK, to be able to spend time thinking about how they can develop a structurally sound but aesthetically pleasing future city that's environmentally friendly, that's ecologically aware, that's globally aware, all those kind of things that we want to see put in. And that's going to be, they've trialed it this year. They're going to run it again next year as part and parcel of what pupils will experience in that school.
Interesting.
Yeah, very interesting. So basically, the idea of a solution is to mix all the subjects with boys and girls and go out there and solve problems, real life problems, right?
Yes, our planet is full of problems, and until now, it seems that the solutions offered by politics didn't work. So that means that kids are our resource for creativity and for not having, they are from 3 on, they do not have stereotypes. If you look at girls or boys playing, you cannot even say, what the difference, say maybe from their personality. And these kids, they want to tackle problems. You really see, as Joe and Richard said, you really see that they want to offer their creativity and resources and ideas. And we have to be careful that school doesn't flat their creativity. That's the point. Because you see that they are creative and full of ideas until a certain age, and then more and more they go up the grades, they start to become a bit cynical. But they are not cynical. It's us, we adults that are transferring to them this attitude.
And I think the work that Richard's already mentioned that we've been doing with teachers has been particularly looking at this idea. You've mentioned the problems that there are in the world, and we found that not just the children but the teachers themselves are excited by
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. And that's part of the issue. Is when the teachers are interested in this, then they will bring those different kind of a different bearing on those different curriculum areas. They know what subjects are in the prescribed curriculum, but it isn't the only thing they can teach and isn't the only way they can do it. So it is about looking at the curriculum structure in a different way. I mean, our work so far has only been in the kind of the elementary up to age 11 sector, but we do have interest in taking that into the lower secondary. The bigger challenge, of course, is doing that as we move up into the secondary school.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's worth saying that although we talked about, finding solutions, setting up problems, a kind of an inquiry-based approach, a problem-solving-based approach, a project-based approach to education, all of which have a long history. I think one of the things that we've been working on over the last, Joe's work out the Imagineering and the work we've been doing recently, has been about how do we make that the best possible education experience for children. Because actually, it's not just throwing subjects together; it's thrown together in a particular kind of way, in a structured way. So one of the things we've been working on in terms of, and we talk about this in the presentation we've done elsewhere at EASE, but the idea that actually setting up a particular community of practice, giving children the kind of task which focuses their attention, so that actually they're given support and resources to be able to be productive in thinking through challenging issues in a way that gives them motivation to keep on trying. Because although they've got to be resilient, they've got to, that not every idea is going to work. Nevertheless, you want to create a situation in which young people are not just expected to be the experts, but they're given that, as you know, Joe keeps reminding me from the drama background, that mantle of the expert from Dorothy Heathcote's work, that actually that we assume that they have expertise, but we also support them to be experts by designing the learning for them in particular ways that are appropriate for their abilities, their aptitudes and abilities. And so, you know, a lot of the work we do with teachers is thinking through, well, this is a great idea, but how are we going to make that practical in the classroom? Or these children at this particular age in that particular type of school context? And that, I think, the teachers have found that that's the demanding bit of the task. You know,
Yes.
We had interviews with them just a couple of months ago, and a number of them came back and said it was great, the project was great, but one of the things we found was that every time we came with what we thought was a really good idea, you and Joe would say, yeah, but what about this? Or could this be improved? What do you really mean by this? They say we go away and think, oh, we've got so much more work to do on it. So designing really good STEAM projects, I think, is a difficult educational curriculum pedagogical task, and we shouldn't take it away, because I think some teachers of disciplines, some science teachers or whatever, think this is just really easy stuff, adding a bit of art in, but actually it's really difficult to get it right. And I think we need to emphasize the idea that good STEAM practice is hard work.
Yes, we experience the same case with teachers in robotics. Can you imagine? It's not easy, to start, learning coding, how to code, or like Arduino, etc. But again, they changed completely the atmosphere in their school, and they found, alliances with unsuspectable teachers like French or geography, and they started to reshape the alliances in their schools, and design, etc. It was really, it did change what they felt also in their life.
Yeah, I think that's a really useful point. Those kinds of connections, finding difference of experts. I suppose one of the things that characterizes the art making community of practice that we've been talking about is recognizing that communities of practice, there are multiples of them, and art makers tend to be very, very connected to different disciplines. They're always drawing upon, they're kind of, they're quite eclectic in the way they work. And so it focuses the teachers to think about, where is the expertise that's useful for me? If what I want to do is to develop a kind of, ecological activism sensibility in my students, where's the natural community of practice that I can align them with, and where using my imaginative sense of projecting that kind of mantle of expertise into them to learn, what is it that I need to set up in the framework that will allow them to take on an authentic, real-world task in a way that they can be imaginative and scientific about. And that's, that is I think a real challenge to set that up. But it's also, in some ways, it's very simple and straightforward. It's engaging schooling with the real-world problems.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, I have a question for you. How do you combine a STEM approach with the national exams and grades for students?
Okay.
That's a good question.
You can start on it.
Okay. So from a UK perspective, I think that's why we talk about needing to be inquiry education, inquiry-based education, and project-based education. In the literature, tends to suggest things like, well, one of the problems is there isn't enough focused teaching. It's very ineffective, and pupils may or may not get to the point you want them to get to in order to pass those kind of exams. And one of the things we've been trying to say all along is actually the whole point of these kind of projects isn't that you lose learning outcomes. It's just that you structure how you're going to achieve those learning outcomes in different kind of ways. And you can do so in a more open way or a more closed way. And one of the issues here is about a more open way, but nevertheless structuring how you use questions in the classroom, structuring how you design a STEAM scheme of work in the classroom enables you to direct children in a way that's fairly open. They've still got a lot of freedom. They still have a lot of agency in terms of what they do, but nevertheless, they're going to move towards achieving the same kind of outcomes, and therefore being able to know what's needed in terms of national assessments. Now, we might want to change national assessments as well in order to make them much more appropriate for preparing children for the real world. I mean, they are pretty abysmal at the moment in terms of that.
But in the short term, pragmatically, that might not necessarily be possible. And I think in our model, the notion of the commission is the significant site in which it is the control of the teacher, the educator, to identify the necessary prescribed curriculum content that comes in. So that the task that is set, the commission of makers, these art makers that are engaging in practice, they are doing so knowing that they are going to have to engage in particular kinds of knowledge development. And that might mean at certain times dipping out, so away from that kind of collaborative community of practice into moments of a more kind of apprentice-like, master pupil learning a particular skill. Fiorella already mentioned coding, for example. Likewise, we have the same thing of our teachers needing to learn CAD, not feeling expert enough on that, feeling they didn't necessarily have the expertise there. So there are times always where you've got to upskill in that process, but it's down to the crafting of the commission to make sure that that either is already planned in at the beginning or that you plan to layer the commission as the project continues, as the work continues, in order that that knowledge is needed and is true to that real world community of practice.
And that's a case of mapping, so for teacher, it's a mapping what children are learning against what the national curriculum outlines are. And there are some, England's very strong on learning outcomes. Other curricular structures are more flexible, whereby the curriculum is structured in one way, but the expectation is that teachers will map to those curriculum outcomes rather than necessarily teach to those curricular outcomes. And that was particularly true when the new Welsh curriculum was put forward a few years ago now, that the curriculum was designed not necessarily to be taught in the way that it was designed. And I think that offers a much better, more flexible approach for teachers.
Some years ago, the Italian Ministry of Education put out a plan called a National Plan for Digital Education. And this was a change for innovation. This helped many teachers to change their way of, assigning marks and using, this subject or teaching the subject divided by subjects. It's a slow change, it is slow because, again, the program are still based on divided subjects, and especially humanities and hard science are still very much not divided, but opposite. But again, this plan allowed to introduce coding and educational robotics in many classes, especially primary. And in primary school, it's easier because, subjects are not very much divided. Middle school in Italy is still a black hole. I think that it's so in many other European nations, because you have this sudden change from having, 1-2 teachers to many, and the marks are very severe. So we are really concentrating on this black hole of middle school, especially where girls are dropping science. And I think that it is so at European wide. What it in England is also the same problem.
Yeah, that is true. Where have you found the success then, Fiorella, in kind of moving into what you call this black hole? For us, it's kind of the formality of a secondary school education, where essentially the exams at age 16 almost dictate the entire shift of culture.
Yes.
Where and how have you managed to make an impact?
With robotics, it was very easy. Because of this National Plan for Digital Education, this allowed schools, they really funded, also with the European Commission Next Generation. Now you are not in the EUA, but I think that you have a similar plan, investing on next generation. And then many schools, they could purchase robotics kits. So we entered like a knife in a butter pan with mathematics. You know, mathematics is the black sheep. Do you have the same expression? Okay. Especially in the middle school. So we said, you know, to overcome many difficulty in mathematics, use robots, coding robots. So you have the OECD, PISA, OECD, okay, same. So this was a way to enter, you know, in the middle schools, especially with the mathematics and physics. Of course, we used robots to do everything possible except algebra. Doing algebra with the robot, you know, but not saying now algebra and everyone runs away, you know.
Yeah.
Yes, so that was very, so we used, you know, with space, you know, do the garden to collect data, etc., etc. So invalsi oxe pisa, you know, using this blackmail. Either you want to have success in oxe pisa or use robots.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Was a trick.
Yeah.
Yeah. And to show the importance of where you have a top-down kind of shift in policy, how important that can be in terms of creating spaces to be able to do some of this work. I think at times we get that in the UK. At times it's much more difficult to get, you know, new approaches in. As we said, you know, part of the problem is because of the siloed nature of schooling in different subject areas, particularly at secondary. It's very difficult to get that across.
Now, the last move by the Italian government, I mean, I'm not saying that it's the best government in the world, not at all. It's only they accepted advices from teachers and also from us, school robotics. Now, coding and educational robotics is compulsory in preschool education from this year. And they are, again, funding for purchasing little kits, you know, like Bebot, Bluebot, again, that's the only really favorable step they did, but was important because teachers felt backed, you know, supported.
Yeah. I think that's a movement that's happening all over Europe. Teachers and the ministers of education trying to reach the European goals in terms of digitalization, in terms of learning robotics and coding and applying science and a STEM approach to education as well. So it's a work in progress, I think. It's going to take a while for all of us to reach the desirable point in terms of success of this approach, but I think we all agree it's a good one and it has a good future to come. Finally, I would like to ask one final question, and because we don't have that much time, I will ask you to give me your answer in 3-4 words, if possible. And the question is, what criteria allows you to define an activity as a STEM activity? Who goes first?
Transdisciplinarity and full integration of the subjects, not just add-ons.
Okay.
So we're going to add a few words.
Oh, excuse me. Go on. No, go on.
I would add to that real world, authentic, and pragmatic.
Active, inclusive, and beautiful.
Good.
I think
very good.
We got there.
Yeah, very good indeed. I don't know if you want to add any extra comment. Final one, please.
No, it's been fun. I mean, I think this is we're in the moment of a golden development of STEAM education. I think it's obvious that STEM on its own isn't working even for STEM, and I think, you know, this is the time to kind of push and make sure we do a good job of developing STEAM education that is, as Rose says, beautiful, transdisciplinary and useful.
Yes.
More girls and women in engineering departments, and the world will dramatically change for the better.
For the better, of course. Here today we have with us also Ronan. Ronan is the co-founder at Greenhouse Technologies and managing director of Quantify Also. Previously served as the president of Alumni Association of the City Group Accelerator Program in Tel Aviv, Israel. Experience since 2004 in development of algorithmic trading strategies, financial trading systems, specializing in execution logics and liquidity. He is the founder of Kids Life Skills, a Luxembourg-based non-profit organization teaching computer coding for kids aged 4 to 13, focusing on problem solving and logical thinking, self-learning, group work and cooperating, creativity and entrepreneurship. Ronan, welcome, and the floor is yours.
Thank you, Anna. All right, so Kids Life Skills, as you mentioned, we indeed focus on essential life skills that are beyond just the scope of STEAM and technology and programming. And today we're going to be talking a bit about the importance of problem solving on the high level of things. So the idea is that when we approach a problem, there's not only one solution for a problem at each time, but there are a variety of solutions. And this is what we're going to be mainly focusing about. So the idea is that we want to basically allow kids to experiment and to try and see what works and what doesn't. So one of the things that we do is we say, once a child is fronted with a challenge, we say this is a great solution, but can you think of another way to solve this? A small personal story of mine: when I was in school, I hated math, or at least I thought I did, because I've always been bashed by my teachers for not doing the solutions in the same way that they showed on the board. But luckily for me, in one of my final years in high school, I had a different teacher that instead of sort of punishing me for thinking of another solution, finding another solution, when he saw that I had a different solution than the one he showed on the board, he said, "Oh, Ronan, that's really interesting. Can you think of another way to solve this?" And this is exactly what we're trying to achieve here. And this is exactly what we're trying to allow the kids to experiment with, to try with, and to find different solutions. So that's one approach for the importance of problem solving. We're going to be talking also about robotics in the educational context, and also about why that is a good tool in our view for teaching problem solving and for experimenting with problem solving. Also, we're going to be talking about how this is important for the curriculum, and how to encourage kids' creativity. Just one point regarding creativity: we don't really believe that we can teach creativity, but we believe that we can, as teachers, as educators, we can either encourage or discourage creativity. Our aim is obviously to encourage creativity, which kids have naturally on their own. And unfortunately, in a lot of educational situations and setups, we tend to see that a lot of educators are discouraging creativity. Even unfortunately, in one of the sessions that we had with kids in a school setup, we try to encourage kids to come up with creative solutions. And one child said something really interesting, and then the teacher sort of lashed at him and says, "No, this isn't what the instructor intended." And we were like, no, that's fine. That's exactly what we're aiming for. So hopefully we'll be able to continue and encourage creativity with kids. So problem solving, again, we think it's a very important tool. To do it with robotics is also something very interesting because you don't always get the same output. Sometimes, let's say if you try something on a rug or on a flat floor, the result might be different. Sometimes some other elements could cause the result to be different, and that actually allows the children to reflect and to try and understand what went wrong, what worked, what didn't work, and how can this be solved. Ideally, in more than just one way, just one solution for a given problem. So that's in regards to robotics. That plays a very important role in our activities as well. And the aim again is to try and see how we can challenge the kids to come up with more than just one solution. Obviously, when we pose a challenge, we have, us as educators, we have a solution in mind or a few solutions in mind. But if we allow the kids to express themselves and if we create an open environment, that helps us lead to a situation where the kids come up with other creative solutions, and robotics, as mentioned, we think is a great way of doing this. So in this example, we're doing an activity where we're identifying a problem. Just a high level about this activity, it's an activity that is aimed to teach kids what is a sequence, where the idea is that there are different actions that a human robot, the instructor or the kids, are doing in a sequence one after the other. And one of the things that we do here is we either randomly the kids generate a bug or we engineer one, and then we challenge the kids how to solve this bug. And once they found one solution, we say, okay, now if this is not possible, how would you solve it in another way? And if this is not possible, how would you solve it in another way? For example, here, one of the things that we like to do is we like to create a sequence where we put the right leg up and then the left leg up without putting the right leg down first. And then what we do as instructors is that the robot, the human robot, the instructor falls down. And then we ask the kids, why did the robot fall down? And then they would come up with a solution. For example, they can come up with a solution of, let's put the leg down. So they're adding a card. And then we say, okay, it's a good solution. Very good. But let's say that we cannot add a card. What else can we do? And then they're coming up with a solution for removing a card all the way or changing the sequence. And in each time we challenge them to find more and more solutions. And at the end we say, without touching the sequence, how can you solve this? Takes them a few seconds, but then they start to come up with very creative ideas, such as the robot is sitting on a chair, or the robot is sitting on the floor, and then when he puts his legs up, he doesn't fall down. We had a girl once that said about this, the robot has wings, so the robot can fly and put both the legs up. We even had one girl that did a handstand. It was a bit of a scary moment there, but just did a handstand and showed us that the robot can put both of the legs up. So there are really so many creative solutions that we can see from kids, and it's surprising. But even after more than 3 years that we teach this, we still encounter kids that come up with new creative solutions that we have never heard of, never seen before. So robotics, again, as we mentioned, is a very intuitive way and a very important way for us to interact and to teach the kids. And one of the things that are important here in terms of problem solving is that you may not always get the exact same result. Again, could be that it's running on a carpet or running on flat floor or any other external element that could affect the results of the experiment. And then we analyze it, and then we try to find solutions. In a lot of cases, we also try to find additional solutions, even if the first solution worked. So we encourage the kids to think of more than just one solution for a problem. In this case, we also use optimization, so that also allows us to extend the challenge to a level of a more optimized solution, not just a different one. So that's in high level about the robotics. And how do we implement this in the curriculum? I think we've covered most of the points here already. Very important is to let the kids have their space, to let them experiment and come up with ideas, and at some points also to come up with challenges. So they don't only look at a problem and try to look for the solution. They are also creating challenges for themselves, for one another, for us as their team, as their teachers and instructors. So for shortage of time, we're going to skip a few of these. I think we're good. We'll cover on most of it. The main thing is that we allow, this is a very important point, like the light bulb moment. The main thing is that we also want to allow the kids to reach the answers by themselves. This isn't exactly related to creativity or problem solving, but it's important to allow the kids to reach it themselves. Obviously, we know the answers, and it's very easy for us to be the fountain of knowledge for the kids. But if we let them get to the solution by themselves, they would have those light bulb moments where they figured it out on their own. Even if they're reinventing the wheel, they've done it themselves, and they have the feeling of success where they have accomplished the challenge on their own. So that's it. The conclusions, I think, have been incorporated throughout all of the presentations, and we are a bit over our 6 minutes there. So thank you so much. Thank you so much for listening.
Thank you, Ronan. Very interesting. So you pointed out a big challenge for the kids these days with problem solving and creativity, including robotics. So it's the 21st century working in the class. Very, very interesting. You can stop sharing the screen now if you want.
Yeah.
Thank you. And we can all comment on Ronan's presentation. So who wants to go first? Richard, Joe, or Fiorella?
I mean, I'll just say something quickly, which I really like the sense of problem solving, which you didn't mention, but I think it sits behind the presentation of it being fun and it being collaborative. And I think those two things are really important in terms of learning. We certainly in the work we do, often we're reminded that education learning ought to be fun and it should be collaborative. And those encourage children to kind of engage in the learning process for themselves. And very often, certainly in England, learning can lack both the fun and to some extent the collaborative approach that I think we're all trying to promote.
Thank you, Rachel.
Yes. Fiorella, you want to say something?
Your presentation was very interesting, and we share your conclusion and also processes in many instances because we felt the same benefits from educational robotics that you presented. For us, educational robots are more than a tool, are really a way to enter in a world where machines will work with us in many areas of work and activities. And so that's why our kids have to be introduced to robotics for its methodology, its sharing the mistakes and sharing solutions. How did you solve the problem of teacher training? Because in Italy, the problem is that many teachers are not trained in educational robotics. Just the opposite. They see it as a way of, let's say, losing time or gadget worshipping, playing with gadget, and it's not. So how did you do?
Yeah, so we're facing those issues, and we also face the issues of teachers that are intimidated by technology, intimidated by coding, intimidated by robotics, because it's not something that they are familiar with. You can say that in their mind, maybe, a computer programmer is like a hacker with the hoodie that sits in a dark room and with a screen and a lot of text on it. But what we're trying to do with teachers mainly is to show them how much fun that could be. Relating also, Richard, to your point, we're trying to show them how engaging, how fun, and how effective that could be. One of the ways that we address this is to show them that it's not a time-consuming or time-wasting activity, but that it could relate to everything else that they are already teaching in class, starting from math, science, but also history, literature, storytelling, and so on. Because you can use those tools for any of those. Same as we don't develop programs or software just to develop the software. We develop them in order to use them for a given end goal, regardless of what the application may be. Same thing is what we're trying to teach the teachers. And one of the ways that we do this is that we actually teach the teachers in a very similar way to how we teach the children, which is through gamification and fun and showing them how interactive and fun that could be. And when they realize that the 3 hours of our training is over, and in some cases we even with the teachers, we even skip the break and they don't even notice it. They're just saying, oh, that was very interesting. And then, it sort of opens up their mind to the possibility that this is something that they could do in class. One of the other ways that we are addressing this is, it took us a while to figure it out, but what we're doing now is we're doing sort of a series of 4 trainings. But between the trainings, we ask the teachers to deliver the lessons in class, and then we go step in step with the teachers as they deliver. And in the second session, we already get the feedback for what they've thought after we've done the first session, and that sort of gets the ball rolling. I can't say that it always helps the ball to keep rolling, but at least the few first activities are there. We had classes that we followed up on year after year, and we've seen some really nice progress. In other cases, unfortunately, the teachers have not followed through as much as they could have, but it's better than nothing, obviously. But I think that the approach should be to engage with the teachers same way as with the kids.
Just to comment, it's a very good methodology we also used. How is it called in English? The reverse class. There is a
flipped classroom.
Yes, because in fact, the best way to learn is to become kids, to go back to the open mind kids have. And we did it, and it was fun. How teachers, male, females, first of all, they were a bit, shame, cautious. And then as soon as started, they became, weird.
Yeah.
Like kids, just like kids. Maybe you have, Richard and John, the same experiences.
Definitely, and I also think that the point Ronan made about kind of putting time in between and encouraging teachers to go back to the classroom and play, try those ideas out. In our experience, those occasions, even when teachers are just a bit doubtful, first of all, they only need to see the responses of the kids, and it feeds their appetite. They want to come back. So I think that long-term way of working and allowing teachers to go back, try small little things out, build their confidence up is really, really important in developing that. Sounds brilliant.
Yeah. So the main idea is to merge teachers and students environment all in one, so they can see what's up for the kids and what's the challenge. But also, it's I suppose it will be very important for the teachers to realize the links between the proposal that you have, the coding and the robotic activity, going through the different subjects, no?
I think that also is important for teachers whose role is not always understood by society and also by families, If they would say, oh, I am doing robotics, educational robotics, their profile increases vis-a-vis society, in society. So they express their attitude to be in reality, not backward 20 years after with all programs still dividing subjects by subject. They say, okay, I am in the mainstreaming, and I am also doing European project on the robotics with other. I can speak English with other colleagues in Europe. Also, the idea to upgrade, to have more respect with the profession of the teacher is important, but also teachers have to upgrade themselves. Not in all nations, this upgrade is funded. Their hours of upgrading maybe is not funded as it should be. What do you think?
Any comments?
Well, I don't know if I'm the right person to ask about teachers' compensation. I originally, I'm from Israel, where teacher compensation is unfortunately very, very low and very bad. And I do hope that the situation would improve there. But currently, and for the last about 6 years, we've been living in Luxembourg. And I'm happy to say that teachers' compensation here is very good, as it should be. I see that the level is also matching the level of compensation, which is great. So I'm not sure that I'm the right person to respond specifically to this question.
I think we'd recognise, certainly from the earlier conversations we've had about the problems that there are in terms of working. I think teachers are worldwide constrained by some of the histories of the global competition in terms of particular subject areas, which means that innovation has been harder to generate. But I think what you've been talking about, Ronan, is something that is whilst it may be situated in one particular area, is essentially a way of engaging the curriculum with the real world. And as you say, by doing so, brings in subject areas in really authentic ways where children are able to be playful and explore, but also engaging skills that are going to be useful for them lifelong. And so I think the more teachers see that, and certainly in our experience, whilst teachers know that they have to address given curriculum, actually what drives them as teachers is seeing their children grow and growing, in their ability to think critically, to be confident in their abilities. That's essentially why I think teachers go into teaching in the first place. And that's why we'll keep and develop the good teachers, is by enabling them to have the freedom to see that their role is to facilitate that kind of creative problem solving. And robotics seems a really brilliant way in which to bring that together.
Yeah, thank you.
Well, we talked about robotics today, but we also do a lot of off-screen activities, a lot of logical thinking problems that are not related to robotics. The thing that's specific about robotics that I focused on in this specific presentation is the joy that it doesn't necessarily always have the same outcome, which allows us to explore even further. But obviously, there are many other off-screen activities and logical challenges that we use that also help them to solve problems. The most simple ones could be even a simple card game. I'm sure that you all know the challenge, like how do you move a sheep, a cabbage, and a wolf across the river?
Yeah.
When you're allowed to have just one. So obviously, in this case, there are two solutions. But I can say that from our activities with kids, we've already had dozens of different solutions that we haven't even thought about. And they all apply.
Yeah.
Creative solutions that they all apply. So this also allows us to increase engagement. So robotics is also important, but not only.
In your opinion, what is the perfect age to start learning robotics and coding?
We start from the age of 4.
4?
And I think that 4 is a reasonable age to start. In some cases, when we see it's too early for the child, we recommend for the parents to start at a later age. We already had several parents that were very anxious to start, that came to us with a child of 3 and 3.5 years old. And usually we don't want to be that organization that says, no, it's not 4 on the ID, so no. So what we do is we allow the kids the same opportunity, and we do a short evaluation. I'm happy to say that I had a child at the age of 3 and 2 months that joined us. And initially we said to the parents, you probably should wait a bit and so on. And then when the child came and we saw, luckily for me, it was actually me that did the evaluation for this specific child. I've seen that we're really talking about something very special. And when that child grew with us, today he's almost 6 years old, we had the opportunity to see him grow, and we've seen some amazing developments. In some cases, when he was not even 4 years old, in a class with older children, 5 and 6. And we've done we've gotten to a very advanced level of activities where we've done reverse engineering. And it was amazing to see, because it's a challenge that's difficult even for adults to solve, because if you tell them the robot is here and how did he get to it, and those are the possible steps, it's not intuitive for most of us.
Yeah.
And it was amazing to see the child looking to the problem, looking to the robot, looking to the problem, and then pointing to the right spot. When you have I think about 30 or 40 options there, pointing to the right spot, getting it like this. So it's really amazing to,
Yes.
personally, I think the child's a genius, which I've told his parents. But it's really interesting and amazing. So I don't think that we can say 4 is the age, but roughly around 4 is the age that we recommend to start.
Okay.
Yes. In some project, we started at 3 years of age with the so-called unplugged robotics, unplugged algorithms. It is very, very funny to work with them, with some kind of playful activities, simply using algorithms without monitor, but using the conceptual algorithm. And it's even more important because in this way, also kids, very, very little kids, 3-4 years, they start thinking in this algorithmic way. It's so important for media literacy, because when they will start to be totally verbal, they will have in their mind already a system to express themselves with subject, verb, complements, etc., because they did it already with their games.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a range of ways in which we can kind of put out prerequisites, because I know one of the things that came out with the engineers we were working with was how much they wanted children to be able to understand materials as well. So the physical world and what's necessary in order to be able to think with algorithms and robots in a kind of very concrete way. Is that actually the same kind of things that you need to be able to understand how different materials operate, and those kind of precursors to being able to get into the right kind of way of thinking this more complex real world way, I think are also important. And some families are very good at that. And obviously some families, it's much more difficult, and we have children who are coming into school in England without a whole range of prerequisites that make it very difficult for them to make the best of the learning opportunities. So, some of the things that we've been talking about, with our early years colleagues, is about how do you develop the right kind of prerequisites. So particularly children who are coming from more disadvantaged backgrounds and perhaps aren't the geniuses, but nevertheless are kind of can be really competent. Is how can they be encouraged to be able to get to that point where they're ready to kind of move forward progressively, almost from, not quite from birth, but from the very early years all the way through up towards 21, 22, 23 years. How do we get that continuation through the entire educational lifespan, that, as we understand it in most European countries?
Yeah, so we are facing a lot of challenges in this 21st century. We all agree with that, I suppose. So, to finalize our meeting, I want to ask Ronan to tell us in 3 or 4 words what it means to create and implement a STEM activity. What do you think, Ronan?
So for us, we try not to look for the specific definition of what is STEM, but on the contrary, we try to see how that could fit in with everything else. Same as like I explained before, that we try to show the teachers how that could be interacted with any other activity. So we don't separate STEM from other topics as such. That said, obviously, something that's related to the topics that are being taught, we feel that those are very important topics, and we feel that they're very, very important for our children's development and for the skill set for the future. We know that a lot of professions that exist today didn't exist 10, 15, 20 years ago, and new professions are coming to the market on a regular basis. I don't think, I did in my earlier life, I did algorithmic trading. And if you'd ask my parents as a kid, what am I likely to do when I grow up, very likely that they would say it, because the profession didn't exist back then. So our parents simply didn't know. I think that we have an advantage over our parents. I still think we don't know what the future holds, but we have the advantage that we know that we don't know. So we want to prepare them for a wide range of possibilities. And I think STEM is just the right touch that could really help improve that to come together.
Mm-hmm. Very good. Yes. Any other comments?
No, I mean, I just echo Lauren's point that we shouldn't get caught up on definitions, really. The point is to be able to support children's growth and development rather than worry too much about where we put it. But of course, that's the advantage for, I mean, certainly some of the stuff we do and Lauren seems to be doing is when you're operating at the edge of school and in the community, you don't quite have the same national pressures that some of our colleagues who are kind of dictated by a curriculum structure say. But I think that's the right way. Don't us worry about the definitions.
Yes. Okay.
I absolutely agree with that. But as you know from the presentation that we gave, the work we're doing is actually tussling with how do you take everything you learn from that broader context of working in communities and outside the formal system and make an impact on that system. So I guess maybe we're dancing more with the devil.
Yes. Well, I want to thank you all for your time to be here with us and talk about all these interesting issues for teachers, students, for families, for community, for society, for the future. Full of new discoveries, full of new activities to do, and hoping and working towards a better world. So thank you so much. Hope to see you next year on our second summit. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yep, thank you.
Dear friends, colleagues on STEM education, this way we close our summit. We hope that you found it interesting and that you have taken from this set of communications the necessary stimulus to undertake, innovate, and constantly surprise your educational audience. We all know that the mind of a STEM educator is always producing new ideas and investing in inventing new approaches. We hope that you have discovered new educational realities and found interest in new colleagues that we have just met across Europe and around the world. Who knows if we won't invite them for our networks? Indeed, the goal of these meetings, like the summit, goes through something like the building of new paths for our educational activity inside and outside school, and also the learning of ways to innovate educationally in network. It is a case to ask in a joking way, networking or not working. The propagation of these communications does not end at this summit. An official summit document will be produced with the transcripts of participating colleagues, and an official position will be taken on the understanding of what STEAM education really is as a concept, and how to classify educational activities that belong to this category. This is a demanding work, a demanding task, but it will serve to build a clear and explicit reference, and therefore much more useful for all of us. It is a consultation that we will extend to our entire community. The possibilities of participating in the EASE, European Association of STEAM Educators, are not limited to this summit. Through our channels, our website, and our Facebook community, you have free ways to participate, and where we can share our doubts, our needs, but also what we do. Why not take a nice picture of our educational activities and publish it? Or why not share a photo of our STEAM workspace? But there are even more engaging ways to participate in EASE. Any of us can be a member of the association and even participate in the executive board and the advisory board. Or simply, you can help our activity through your membership. You can inscribe in is-educators.com. Also, we would be very glad if you could share with our community and through the exchange program available in our website any lesson plan on STEAM education that you have built. We have this sharing community with resources from you and also for you. On our page at is-educators.com, we are constantly building resources to help colleagues in their work. As of today, we have around 30 lesson plans about STEAM education, more than 100 articles published in scientific journals about STEAM education, STEAM materials at more affordable prices for members without any profit margin for EASE. Also, we have the European map of STEAM education with more than 1,300 organizations. You can join also your organization at any time. And many other resources and information about what is happening in Europe in terms of STEAM education. We really want to ease your work. Talking a little more about the summit, we are going to rebroadcast on our social networks the interventions that we have been watching here. Once a week on our Facebook page, we will remember the ideas that have been presented to us, promoting them and placing them as a valuable resource in our community. And this way, we say goodbye to you. These were 2 days of presentations that resulted from a lot of work by more than 50 people, and that we hope have brought some contribution to the evolution and development of STEAM education in Europe from those who are its main protagonists, the STEAM educators. So, have a great school year and full of STEAM education projects. See you!